There are some brands of watches that I just haven't been aware of or have not given enough attention to. And in today's video, that's going to change for one particular brand because I'd seen one model from the Louis Erard watches, or Louis Erard, I apologize if I'm saying this incorrectly, that I think looked really cool and I was aware of it, but I had no understanding of both the brand or their watches until now, until I did a dive into it. And today I'm going to share with you 12 awesome watches from this brand, Louis Erard. Hello, you're watching James. My name's James, you're watching me, and I am talking about watches. And today I'm going to be talking about some awesome watches from the brand Louis Erard, or Louis Erard. I'm not actually sure how you say it. I probably should have looked that up prior to making this video, but I didn't, so I'm going to be saying Louis Erard. And one thing that I'm not going to be doing too much of is digging too much into the history or the idea of how the brand came into existence, because I don't make very good videos that way. I've tried before and they haven't come out that great. What I am really good at though is diving into the back catalogue of watches, looking at used watches from a brand and finding some really amazing stuff, things that really stand out to me. Some of the watches in my collection that are my favourites are as a result of doing exactly that. And that is what I'm going to be doing today, because I've found 12 incredible watches that I want to share with you guys from this brand, Louis Erard. But just a little bit of context, although I'm not good at that historical stuff, I will say that I have looked a little bit and tried to find out a little bit about this brand. And I can see that it is a Swiss-made brand. It started in 1929. It appears that it's gone through a few evolutions and a few ownerships, but realistically, the watches that I'm going to be showing you today are from the most recent sort of ownership of the company, which occurred in 2003. And that appears to be the watches that realistically are available now, unless you are looking for vintage pieces. And so it's quite interesting when you do look at the watches that have started to produce from 2003, that there has been some evolutions in style. They've really gone into a niche of a particular style. And some of the watches that I'm going to be sharing with you today, the ones that I think look really cool, are exactly in that niche, but not all of them. So let's get across to my desk and I'm going to show you these 12 awesome watches. So no matter how you say that brand name, and I'm not going to say it again because I'm probably going to say it wrong, so I do apologize out there. If you do know how to pronounce it, feel free to let me know. But I'm going to be sharing with you 11 of their watches today, and I'm going to be utilizing Chrono24. I use Chrono24 as a tool to search for watches just because they have so many watches on there, and they do it in a format that presents the watches well and generally tend to give you quite a bit of information and filters as well. I'm also going to be showing in Australian dollars today because, well, I don't actually want to show you prices of watches. That's not the point of today's video. It's more about just showing you some watches that you may not have seen before. But let's now have a look at the watches that I've chosen. Now, this is probably one of the most simple versions of their watches, and I wanted to show it because I think it's actually quite a good looking watch, but they're also sort of the most affordable versions of the watches as well. And I think they're around about 42 millimeters. That's a 42 millimeter case, sapphire crystal, 100 meters of water resistance, made in 2020. But I wanted to show you just as a simple variation from this brand, because this could be quite a nice Swiss-made automatic everyday watch. It's nice, it's neat, it's tidy. It's not the designs from them that I'm really quite keen to show you, but I thought it was a nice, good starting point, because just as a solid Swiss-made, nice presenting watch, nice size, that's a cool watch. And I'm going to follow up with the second, probably most simple version of their watches today. Again, because it's relatively affordable, this one's like new, and I'll probably see quite a few from this brand that are a few years old, but that are being sold as new old stock. This one reminds me a lot of Moser, probably because of that blue color. It is a 41 millimeter with 50 meters of water resistance, but it just has a beautiful dial to it. Nice that they put the date window down there at the 6. Really nice case as well. I think it has a really lovely curve to it. I love how it sort of cuts away there. I'll see if there's a better, yeah. See how this cuts down along that case there and then back up again, or that sort of solid bezel. Very nice, very lovely. But again, very simple looking watch. It's not actually why I want to show you this brand, but it is beautiful and it's really, really well priced. And for that sort of price, for a like new Swiss-made automatic beautiful dress watch, it's not too bad. But let's get into some of the more interesting watches that I want to show you, because this one's very cool. They are quite known for their regulator style watches, or regulator things. If you're unsure of what a regulator is, well, this is not a traditional looking regulator, but the regulator has a dial up here with the hours, a dial down here for the seconds, and then a large central minute hand. Now this is not the standard looking one. This one has a power reserve over here and this weird looking waffle dial, and this has almost a disc with the numbers rather than a hand, so it's not the standard regulator, but you can see it is a manual mechanical movement, and it's just a cool looking watch. And there's quite a few variations of this one if you look. This brand, I've noticed as well, when you do look at the different versions of them, there are lots of not only color variations, because you can get this in black or white or whatever it happens to be, but also different versions of it. So there'll be the power reserves over here, and then there'll be other bits and pieces, but just very sort of cool watches with variations. So if you like any of these, go dig a little bit deeper. It's a 42mm, 42 hours of power reserve, manual winding, so I'm going to butcher that as well, I'm not even going to bother saying that, with all the bits and pieces. So worth diving into that one if you like it, and I think that is actually quite a cool looking watch. And at this sort of price range, although that's not cheap, it's a lot of watch for that money, I think. Okay, now we're starting to go into slightly sort of different and interesting ones. This is the only one I could find of this specific model, and it doesn't even give you the model name. There's not a lot of information about it as well, because when you scroll down here, there's not much here. It doesn't even tell you the size of the watch. So I do apologize for that. It does show you that it is an ETA style movement or a Swiss mechanical movement, but I quite like this dial type. I quite like this sort of slightly off center. It's not exactly the one I like, but I do think it's kind of cool, and in this price category I think it's actually really quite different and nice, and something a little bit different, and that's what this brand seems to be leaning towards, especially when you get into the more newer watches. It goes for something a bit different, and this is what I actually wanted to show you, because this is the case back, and you can see the movement is just offset. The whole movement is offset, and the rest is just steel and it's screwed in. I think that's quite an interesting way of doing it, which is obviously then achieved that slightly offset dial, so the movement is just sitting over here. So that's kind of cool. This one is actually one of my favorites from it. It's the Moon Phase, the 1931. It's from 2016. Has it got a size here? It is a 44mm, so it is quite a big watch, but again, made with an automatic movement. Let's zoom in on this one. What I like about this is it has the month, or the month over here, the day. It's also got the date somewhere. Where is it? Oh yeah, sorry, there's a pointer date here. See, that's a pointer date, so you've got all the date, the day, the month. This is a moon phase. In one of the photos you'll see a little bit later, this little window here is the moon phase. Nice sort of looking sort of dial there. The numbers are applied. There's some nice sort of 3D effect to it. Pushes to activate the different complications. It does say Moon 1931 on the side, which is not my favorite, but that's okay. You can see it's an automatic mechanical movement there. And you just see there is quite a bit of depth to those applied sections. I like how this sort of has these screws. I think that's quite cool. And here, you can see they're just there. You can see the crescent just starting of the moon. So a little bit different, quite cool, quite chunky sort of hands there. Like that it's a pointer date with all those extra complications. And that price for a watch with all these complications and being such a unique design, well, I'm not sure if I've seen anything else that really ticks all those boxes to that. But obviously you'd have to like this particular design. And this one's a bit unique, because this reminds me a lot of a tag actually. And it's a really cool looking watch. If I was going for a square watch, which I actually quite like the idea of a square watch, I just don't think I'd wear it enough to justify it. But this is a chronograph square, and it's a nice size. I think I'll show you that in a second. Obviously got all the applied markers there. Really cool looking watch. Let's just go through a couple of the photos there. Yeah, I think I like those pushes as well. No see-through case back, leather strap. You can see that it is a sapphire crystal, 50 meters of water resistance. Cool looking watch. And look at the price. It's not too bad at all. You know, obviously this is a second-hand watch, 39mm. Yep. And being a square, that would be actually quite big, but I think that's actually quite a nice size, quite a nice design, and nice and chunky. Yeah, I like that one. And for around 16, 1700 Australian dollars, you know, compared to the equivalent in the tag that looks very similar, that's a lot cheaper. Oh, hello. Sorry to interrupt. I hope you're enjoying the video so far. And if you are enjoying the video, I would just like to invite you to subscribe to the channel. You just have to click on that little subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything, but it does make a big difference to me and this channel, and really gives me that motivation to continue making content. But let's get back to this video. A little bit more of a traditional style chronograph here. Let's have a look at this. Around $2,000. Again, this is a new, I think this is a couple of years old though. Yeah, as I mentioned, there's quite a few sort of new old stock versions of this
40 millimeter, that's good. 50 meters of water resistance, sapphire crystal. Let's have a couple of the photos of this one. The reason I like this is a couple of things. Partly that size is nice. I do like this top and bottom style chronograph, and these hands, these big sword hands. No loom, however, so worth keeping that in mind. And I quite like how they've done the 9 and the 3 large, so it sort of increases size, decreases size. Let's have a flick through it, look at the different photos of this one. Actually just a really cool looking watch, and 40 millimeters, you know, new old stock for around $2,000. I think that's quite good, especially for a mechanical chronograph watch. You struggle to find a mechanical chronograph watch for much less than that. And from a brand, Swiss-made movement, Swiss heritage sort of brand. As I mentioned earlier, it's got a little bit of an interesting history, but I like it. I think that's cool, interesting, and worth considering. Certainly, if I was really looking for a chronograph, which I'm not right now, this would really grab my attention. I'd actually be going back and forth between this and that square. I'd probably end up going this because I think I'd wear that design a little bit more often. But this is one that really grabs my attention. And look at the price. That's not too bad. But in particular, look at these two things. Big date, dual time. Because it has that big date right there under the 12, which I think looks kind of cool there. And with the magnifying as well, Cyclops. And this here is a dual time. So that's spinning around, giving you another time. Let me have a look at this on an angle. Look at the 3D effect here. Look how much depth is sitting there. I'm assuming you use that blue little marker there to then tell the time on the second one. Let's zoom in on this. Let's make it, look, that looks a bit better. I think that's a cool looking watch. Honestly, nice blue touches, blue hand, blue marker there, blue little markers around, Swiss made, automatic there, sapphire crystal it says right there. Let's have a look at the size. I get the feeling this is a slightly larger watch, however, so that's worth keeping in mind. Yeah, it's a 44 millimeter. Big watch, but this type of watch, well, I think it forgives that. 50 meters of water resistance. Super cool looking. And I love that depth there. I think it just gives this something really rather special. And around that price range, like, this is actually really one that is really on my possibly might buy in the future list. I am being mindful how much money I spend lately, but I just really like it. This is another one that I really do like. Just over $2,000, the Excellence range. 39 millimeters. This one I know comes in a lot of different dial colors. I think there's a white and a black and a blue, and it's worth just checking out. But this sort of copper look, wow, I just think it looks fantastic. And look how big this sub-second is with all those circular patterns. Now this sort of 2, 4, 8, 10, 12 is a very traditional look. There's a lot of watches that have this style, but just look at the size of that, this color variation, those hands. I think they are blue hands, although the photos don't really show it very well. Quite a cool case. I'm not sure how thick that is because it's an automatic. That's probably the one thing that stops me really wanting this one. I think this would be much better as a manual and a bit thinner, but still, what a great looking watch. And then, oh yeah, look at that nice custom rotor there. Just a lovely looking watch. I think, yeah, this brand has really grabbed my attention. Just, it has so many interesting variations of styles, especially when you go back throughout the years. But the quality of them apparently is amazing. And I think just the different variations, yeah. And look at the prices of these things. Like another brand perhaps that has the same thing would be a lot more than that. The only other place you could go for something that looks a bit like this that has as much value for money, I think, would be more in the micro brand space. And this is a 100-year-old brand. So that's pretty cool. I like that one. But this is actually the one that first grabbed my attention. This is a more traditional regulator sort of look with the hour, seconds, and minute. But this is not obviously a particularly traditional looking dial with all these sort of nice sort of markings there on the steel. And there are variations of this one too. So this one has Roman numerals, which is not my go-to, but for this style, I think it kind of works. There are other variations of it. Let's see if there's sort of an angle showing. Yeah, that's a bit of a better picture. Blue hands, blue hands, blue hands. Yeah, I really like that. I think that's cool. I think that's actually very cool. I like that a lot. $3,500, so it's getting more expensive now. I've noticed some of their more regulators and their newer versions are getting more expensive. 42 millimeters, 50 meters of water resistance, sapphire crystal. Let's just see if there's another one of these watches. There are a few of them. This is the one that sort of first stood out to me. I think I saw one on Instagram, and I first just saw these patterns, and you don't see it much in that photo. Let's find another photo, because that, yeah, this patterns here really stood out. In this one you can see that there is some pattern link behind there, and you can really see the blue hands, but it's the, does that show it? Where was the photo that showed it properly? Let's go back. Sorry guys. Oh, there we go. That, you can really see the detailing on that dial. And in light, it really captures the light, because the photo that I saw of it looks really, really cool. But then they also do this sort of style, the 1931 telemeter, and I like the telemeter looks. I think they look kind of cool. A 42.5mm, let's zoom in. Really nice looking watch, has the blue and the red and the tachymeter, and it's a chronograph. Let's flick through it a little bit. Yeah, very traditional style, still a relatively modern watch, however, not brand new, but it's, yeah, look at that. Nice new mechanical movement. Yeah, and a mechanical chronograph in this sort of price range from a Swiss-made brand. This sort of price range, yeah, that's quite amazing. I think this one, you need to look a little bit deeper to find them. There aren't that many listings. I had to look for this one. But it has 50 meters of water resistance and 42.5 millimeters, I do apologize. Now, I did get confused between 11 and 12 watches. I do actually have 12 watches. This is the watch that is probably they're most known for right now. This is their sort of big seller. It's a really funky, interesting, weird one. You may have seen this one before. It's probably the only one that I'd ever seen from the brand before, and I didn't even know what the brand was. I just looked at the funky watch. This is a regulator too, because there's the hour up there, second, and the minute hand. It's just done in this very fun way with this very different case as well. Let's flick through this a little bit. I've seen people sort of lose their marbles over this watch because they really, really like it, and it sort of becomes like a grail watch for them, which it's not one that really stands out to me as something that I'd want to own, but it does definitely stand out to me. It's a very cool, interesting watch, but they are more expensive because these are the more new one. This is a 2022 model, but these are still available now. So not my favorite of their range, but definitely something a little bit fun. So it is a really cool brand, which the more I look at them, the more I start to actually really like them. And out of that list I showed you just then, there's 3 that I really, really like, and 2 are actually on my wish list. Now, I've been spending a lot of money on watches lately, so they're probably not going to enter the collection anytime soon, but it wouldn't surprise me if one popped up at the right price that I just grabbed it. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this brand if you know a little bit about them, or if there's any watches that I haven't featured that are worthwhile sort of checking out. Leave me a comment, but after you do that, maybe you could check out one of my other videos next.